The sound of the blood pressure monitor filled the room. Irene watched the gauge with a pained expression, her hands trembling involuntarily from the tension. Ruby gave her mother-in-law a stern look. "Stop moving your arm." Irene's suffering turned into irritation. "I'm not moving." Ruby insisted. "Yes, you are. It's not good." Irene, annoyed, snapped back. "Think you're so smart." Despite her annoyance, she complied and kept her arms still. Her eyes, however, were still filled with anxious anticipation as she watched the gauge. When the air started hissing out of the monitor, Irene glared at her daughter-in-law. "What? Is it bad?" Ruby smiled. "No, the readings are normal. Your systolic pressure is a bit high, but it's not critical. At your age, it happens for many reasons: fatigue, poor sleep, or stress." Ruby reached to remove the blood pressure from Irene's arm, but she roughly pushed her hand away. "I'll do it myself." "You say stress? Who could endure such a life with just normal nerves? You and Liam have tormented me so much over the past 6 months that my legs give way. Tell me, how long am I supposed to endure such torment?" The question was clearly directed at Ruby, but she didn't acknowledge it. Instead, she replied in a didactic tone. "Irene, you're driving yourself into stress. No one is tormenting you. You make up these incredible stories and believe them, which is why your blood pressure spikes." Ruby's calm tone only infuriated her mother-in-law more. "Is it so hard for you to check my blood pressure?" "No, it's not hard. I can check it every hour, even at night, but it would be much easier if you had an automatic monitor. You think I'm a fool for not wanting to spend money on such junk?" "Irene, those are your words. I've never thought that way, and I've always been taught to respect my elders and not argue with them. Back in my village." Irene cut her off harshly. "Enough about your village. I'm sick of your myths." She jumped up from her chair and looked down at Ruby, who was much shorter. "I just can't understand one thing. If everything is so wonderful in your village and the people there are so great, why do you all come to the city? You should stay there and enjoy your rural life." With the same calmness, Ruby replied. "Everyone has the right to choose where to live and work. For example, I've always wanted to be a doctor like my mother, so I became a nurse." Irene walked past her, saying as she went, "You always has an excuse." A minute later, the smells from the kitchen were making Ruby's stomach growl, but she didn't want to start another argument, so she decided to wait until her mother-in-law finished eating. Irene took her time. After a few minutes, she called out, "Ruby, where did you go? Come have breakfast." Ruby replied, her voice sounding tired. "I'll grab something at work. I'm not hungry right now." Her mother-in-law shouted back. "Do I have to drag you to the table? You already look like a shadow. Men don't like skinny women." Reluctantly, Ruby headed to the kitchen. Irene was happily munching on a sandwich and sipping hot coffee. Nodding at Ruby, she offered her to join the meal in a surprisingly friendly manner. "Why are you standing? Sit down. I hope you can pour your own coffee." "Yes, of course. Thank you, Irene." Ruby's breakfast lasted no more than 10 minutes, but in that time, she heard all about the latest happenings in their building and how most of the doctors at the local hospital didn't know anything about medicine and shouldn't be trusted with patients. Ruby didn't argue with her mother-in-law, knowing it was pointless. She quickly cleared the table and was about to wash the dishes when Irene stopped her. "Go to work, or you'll be late. I'll wash them myself. I've got nothing else to do anyway." Irene's last words were filled with undisguised sadness, and Ruby couldn't help but feel sorry for her mother-in-law. Despite her difficult nature, this stubborn woman occasionally showed the kindest feelings. When Ruby and Liam suddenly had to vacate their rental apartment, Liam's mother offered them the smallest room in her place. However, she did this without much enthusiasm and immediately warned them. "Don't expect to stay long. I feel uncomfortable with strangers in my apartment. Liam tried to remind his mother of his rights. Mom, I'm registered in this apartment too. It's not nice of you to say such things. I might get offended. But Irene was not easily rattled. Son, you messed up, and now you're talking about your rights. I worked hard at the factory all my life, not to become a burden in my old age. Liam laughed so hard that Ruby got scared. She didn't understand the reason for her husband's hysterical laughter, but he explained. Mom, spare me. You've worked in accounting all your life, so the word worked hard doesn't really fit your profession. And the term burden doesn't match your definition either. Her son's remark was met without her usual skepticism. To make her son feel her pain, she even shed a tear. Liam, instead of staying quiet, you had to humiliate your own mother in front of a stranger. Ruby is not a stranger, she's my wife. This reminder infuriated Irene the most. Son, she's your wife, but to me, she's nothing. All this was said in Ruby's presence, clearly intended to hurt her. At first, Ruby cried in secret and even thought about leaving Irene's house, but her young husband pleaded with her. Ruby, it will pass. I know my mother too well. She seems tough, but she's really a very sensitive woman. Do you want me to talk to her? Ruby desperately wanted her mother-in-law to at least respect her. But no matter how hard Liam tried, he couldn't change the situation. Irene continued her verbal abuse towards the defenseless girl, while her husband was torn between them, not knowing what to do. Irene had disliked Ruby from the start, even before the wedding. After their first meeting, she concluded. She's simple. Pretty on the outside, but wild on the inside. Liam, is this really what you dreamed of? The young man defended his chosen one, but his mother only grimaced. Oh, stop it. I know this type of girl. Mark my words, one day this Ruby, my goodness, even her name is so basic, Ruby, one day she'll surprise you in such a way that you'll be shocked. Of course, back then Liam didn't believe his mother's predictions and initially treated the situation with irony. But later, he found no reason to laugh. Irene didn't even attend their wedding, citing poor health. Liam was deeply hurt by his mother's absence and for a year and a half, he barely communicated with her. He responded curtly to her regular calls. Mom, don't worry, I'm fine. No, I'm not starving. Ruby cooks wonderfully. Typically, his mother ended the phone conversation with a standard question. I'm curious, Liam, what did that country girl do to make you turn away from your mother? Liam tried to explain that it was she who started this ugly game, but Irene would hang up before he finished. She was convinced that one day her son would come back to her. That moment of triumph came a year and a half after his hasty marriage. The young couple had been hopping from one rental to another. The landlord of their latest apartment gave them just a day to vacate, and with no other options, Liam informed his mother that they had nowhere to live. Irene didn't hide her joy. She dragged her son into the kitchen and started feeding him. Eat, you're so thin, only your eyes are shining. This is what happens when you neglect your mother. Liam tried to get a word in, but Irene didn't even pause to catch her breath. He listened silently, knowing that their immediate future depended on her. After half an hour of lecturing, Irene finally stopped. You think I'm heartless? No, I'm not. For your happiness, I'm willing to tolerate your so-called wife in my house. Liam wanted to correct his mother, but feared she might change her mind. He mumbled softly. Thank you, Mom. We will never forget your kindness. Irene beamed. All right, bring your princess over. Liam went to the hospital where Ruby worked. When the young woman heard that they would have to stay with her mother-in-law, she protested. Liam, I don't want to accept help from your mother. I don't trust her sincerity. She can't stand me. His wife's resistance angered Liam, and he couldn't hold back. You both are driving me crazy. Ruby, you know we can't choose our mothers. Can you just swallow your pride for a bit? Bear with it until we sort out our housing situation. I promise I'll start looking for a cheap place first thing tomorrow. But Liam's promises turned out to be empty words. Soon, he forgot about his disagreements with his mother and his wife's discontent. For the first week of their cohabitation, Irene was the epitome of hospitality. Every evening, she baked cookies or an apple pie and treated her son and daughter-in-law. Eat up, don't be shy. Maybe one day you'll thank me for my kindness. She even seemed to establish a connection with her daughter-in-law, sometimes waking up at 6 in the morning to prepare breakfast for them. However, this honeymoon period ended abruptly when Ruby used Irene's shampoo without asking. Irene expressed her outrage to her son. Liam, teach your wife the basic rules of decent behavior. Then again, what do I expect? Does a country bumpkin even know what etiquette is? Despite this direct insult to his wife, Liam didn't defend Ruby. He feared losing the home comfort he had been accustomed to since childhood. His silence was taken by his willful mother as approval. She began to complain to her son about Ruby, accusing the young woman of being sloppy. "Oh, son, I didn't want to say anything, but your wife is quite incompetent. I asked her to peel potatoes, and she left all the eyes. Maybe that's how they do it in the countryside." Later, Irene criticized Ruby for washing clothes incorrectly and using too much water. She even noticed how long Ruby spent in front of the mirror before work. "Liam, make sure she doesn't cheat on you. Those country girls are all brazen and always on the lookout for a richer man." This statement Liam couldn't let slide. "Mom, has Ruby ever given you any reason to say such nasty things about her? And are you going to wait for a reason? Watch out, Liam. Your Ruby might get pregnant by someone else, and then you'll be raising and supporting someone else's child for the rest of your life. Mom, don't you dare talk about my wife like that. And don't you shout at your mother. You'd better listen to what I'm saying." Irene eventually achieved her goal. She managed to plant a seed of suspicion in her son's heart. But the old schemer wasn't satisfied with that. She devised a grand plan to get rid of her daughter-in-law once and for all. However, she couldn't accomplish such plans alone, so she found an ally among Ruby's colleagues. Her personal informant became Hannah, a nurse in the therapeutic department where Ruby worked. This naturally envious woman had a vivid imagination and told Irene such stories about Ruby that made her blood run cold. But Irene knew that gossip alone wouldn't build a strong case. She needed a powerful argument that could eliminate her rival in one blow. And she was determined to wait for the right moment. Despite holding a college degree, Irene didn't understand much about the laws of physics. However, her life experience had taught her that negatively charged people are attracted to each other by an unknown force. When she had problems with her blood pressure and Ruby arranged for her to be treated in her department, Irene immediately saw Hannah as a useful fool. Her suspicion was confirmed when Ruby warned her mother-in-law upon her admission to the hospital. "Irene, try to stay away from Hannah." "Why? Does she bite?" Ruby smiled. "No. She hasn't been caught in such behavior yet, but her tongue. Is it better not to get involved with her? Don't worry about me, I can put any upstart in their place with one word." On the very first day of her hospital stay, Irene confirmed her capabilities. She didn't like the quality of the bed linens and decided to voice her complaints. The outraged patient raised her voice. "I'm not going to catch ringworm or dermatitis in your hospital." Hannah looked at the patient in bewilderment. "Ma'am, what's the complaint? What's wrong with the linens?" The patient unfolded the bundle and pointed to a crimson stain. "What's this?" "Then I'll tell you, it's an old blood stain. This is a disgrace." Hannah was shocked and stuttered in her defense. "It's a mistake. All our linens go through several stages of processing. Listen, save your lies for someone else, not me. I'll go to the ministry, and you'll be the first to be fired because you're a lousy nurse." A frightened Hannah began to beg Irene not to escalate the situation. "Please forgive me. Of course, it's my fault, I overlooked it. But I'll fix it right away. I'll get you a new set of linens with tags. Hannah personally changed the bed linens and, in the following days, went out of her way to please the demanding patient. Irene was only in the hospital for a week, but it was enough time to understand a lot. The main thing she grasped was the peculiar relationships within the staff. The doctors formed a special caste and spoke to everyone condescendingly. Nurses and orderlies were merely a necessary part of the work process to them. The only person with free access to the doctor's lounge was the nurse. Hannah often complained to the doctors about anyone who had made a mistake. Irene caught Hannah in this undignified act just before her discharge. She needed the attending physician's signature and entered the lounge without knocking. Hannah was passionately recounting some nurse's mistake. She spoke so loudly that the patient immediately understood what was going on but pretended not to notice. The doctor signed the document, and Hannah left the room with Irene. Once the door closed, Irene quietly asked the informant. "Hannah, aren't you afraid the girls will find out and you'll regret this?" The nurse quickly regained her composure and retorted defiantly. "I advise you not to meddle in things that don't concern you. It's dangerous for your health. Are you discharged? Then go home." Hannah's eyes flashed with hostility as she swayed her hips and walked down the corridor. At that moment, Irene thought Ruby was right when she warned her about this woman's treachery. She never felt the desire to see her again. Just yesterday, Irene unexpectedly remembered this woman. With her help, I can free Liam from the burden of this marriage. Hannah will find me the evidence that Ruby is flirting with her patients. Irene mentally sketched out a plan and decided to act immediately. I shouldn't delay, or unforeseen circumstances might ruin everything. Her greatest fear was that Ruby would get pregnant, forcing her to tolerate her daughter-in-law for years. She couldn't bring herself to kick out her son's family with a baby. Moreover, she feared becoming attached to an unborn grandchild. Since she and Hannah parted more as enemies than friends, there were doubts about establishing cooperation. She didn't have Hannah's mobile number, so she had to wait for her outside the hospital. This posed the risk of running into Ruby. In short, there were many more cons than pros. She waited in the park for over an hour when a brilliant idea struck her. Why am I waiting? I should ask one of the patients to call Hannah. Among the group of smoking men on the porch, one agreed to help. Sure. What should I tell her? Tell her a former patient wants to thank her for her kindness. Hannah appeared on the porch 5 minutes later. She didn't notice Irene right away, but when she realized who had asked for her, she said disappointedly, "It's you. And here I thought someone needed me urgently." Irene knew how to handle people like Hannah. She first hinted at her request, mentioning a small reward for the favor, then laid out the task. Hannah's face lit up. "Irene, I'll do it perfectly. I see through everyone like they're under a microscope. I know exactly what everyone is up to." After boasting about her incredible abilities, Hannah glanced around cautiously and then whispered loudly. "I'll tell you a secret, Irene. Your suspicions about Ruby aren't unfounded. Men are constantly after her, showering her with gifts." Irene was shocked and muttered through gritted teeth. "Really? She never mentioned this and brought nothing home. So she must be hiding something." Hannah continued. "Definitely. For instance, Mr. Brown from room 7 was discharged recently. I can't remember his first name, but he was quite a gentleman and had a private room." Irene felt her mouth go dry with anticipation. "And what about Mr. Brown?" Hannah shrugged her plump shoulders. "Nothing much. Everything seemed decent. He gave Ruby flowers and a box of chocolates. The bouquet is still in the nurse's station, and we all shared the chocolates over tea." Irene was disappointed. "Is that all?" "That's all. But I don't keep a close eye on your daughter-in-law. The patients don't complain about her, and the doctors are pleased with her work. They say she's young but quick-witted. Ruby learns fast, and her force skills are better than some of the experienced nurses. That's why they assigned her to the procedure room. Irene realized the conversation was veering off course. Hannah, are you saying my daughter-in-law has no flaws? But you know better than I do that nobody's perfect. I need dirt on her. Something so damning that Ruby can't talk her way out of it. Hannah remained silent. Irene quickly realized that her companion was waiting for the main incentive, how much she would get for her service. Irene put her arm around Hannah's shoulders. I know how to show gratitude. I assure you, Hannah, you won't regret this. Feel free to call me anytime. She pulled out an old business card from her wallet and handed it to her accomplice. Hannah looked at her with respect and then unexpectedly asked. Professor Michael Lloyd, is he by any chance related to you? My brother studied under him. Irene froze. Yes, he was my husband. But unfortunately, he passed away. I've been a widow for 8 years now. Her last words were spoken with a hint of sorrow, and Hannah, seizing the moment, said emotionally. That's so sad. My brother always spoke highly of your husband. He never missed his lectures. I, too, was widowed early and never remarried. Who knows how long the women would have exchanged pleasantries if Hannah hadn't been called back. An unfamiliar nurse burst onto the porch and called out loudly. Hannah, how much longer do I have to wait for you? Hannah turned pale. That's the head nurse. I need to go. She rushed back into the hospital, leaving Irene to walk thoughtfully towards the bus stop. Her imagination was vividly painting scenes of revenge against her hated daughter-in-law, picturing Ruby crying and begging Liam for forgiveness. Lost in her fantasies, Irene nearly collided with a man walking in her direction. He managed to step aside just in time and grumbled. Watch where you're going, lady. Irene looked at the man in astonishment, something about his appearance strikingly familiar. He stopped too, staring at her in disbelief. Irene? Is that really you? Her heart skipped a beat, and she exhaled in fear. Vince? A traditional silent moment followed. The man was the first to regain his composure and even smiled. Irene. What a surprise. I knew we would meet again someday, but I never expected it to happen in a hospital park. Though, considering our age, it's understandable. Irene was still recovering from the shock, her thoughts scattered. She could only smile foolishly and nod at her former classmate. With a smirk, Vince asked. Do I look that different? I recognized you right away. 30 years have passed, but you haven't changed much. Still beautiful and unapproachable. Irene looked at the distinguished man in an expensive suit, unable to believe that this was the same Vince who had been in love with her during their student years. She immediately forgot about her plans for revenge on her daughter-in-law, as this meeting with her past stirred pleasant memories in her heart. Irene had often regretted things in her life, as she, like many others, frequently made mistakes. But her biggest mistake was with Vince. He was a handsome guy, and many girls dreamed of winning his heart, but Vince fell in love with Irene right from their first year. She captivated him not only with her beauty but also with her strong character. Irene always achieved her goals and could lead her classmates. The boys often teased Vince. With a wife like her, you'll never fail. Such girls are rare these days, so Vince, you're a lucky guy. Vince would blush, but he was pleased that his friends approved of his choice. Irene also accepted his courtship for a long time. But he later realized that she did it out of boredom, not genuine feelings. The news that Irene was dating Michael, their economics lecturer, hit him like a 10-point storm. Vince didn't believe the rumors and demanded an explanation from his beloved. Irene, as usual, responded bluntly. Yes, I'm dating Michael Lloyd. After all, girls aren't forbidden from seeing single men. This answer floored him. He lowered his head and said uncertainly. I thought we were serious, and we would get married soon. We've been together for 2 years. She laughed. You thought. Vince, do you know what my grandmother says? Vince shook his head, and Irene continued to wound his pride. Only fools think, smart people act. Seeing that her unlucky suitor was on the verge of a nervous breakdown, Irene softened her tone. Vince, we've been friends, and I'm very grateful for everything you've done for me. But, unfortunately, you can't command the heart to love. It chooses on its own. Vince took this blow of fate hard. He didn't bother his beloved and quietly stepped aside. In September, when the new academic year began, Irene found out that Vince had left the city. But she was no longer interested in the fate of the boy she had rejected, as all her thoughts were occupied by Michael Lloyd. Her classmates envied Irene. Why do some people get lucky while others don't? Such questions didn't bother Irene in the least, and she would reply. Because, girls, those born to crawl can't fly, that's the law of life. Unsurprisingly, after such remarks, the girls started to avoid her, and some quietly hated her. But Irene wasn't bothered by others' opinions or her classmates' envy. She held on to the young candidate of economic sciences with a death grip and didn't let go until they were at their wedding. Irene naively thought that she could breathe a sigh of relief after the wedding, but things didn't go as she planned. Almost immediately after the honeymoon, her husband began to indulge in debauchery. Michael didn't even try to hide his escapades, and when his wife confronted him about his infidelity, he calmly said, Irene, I told you before our wedding that I'm against ancient traditions. In many civilized countries, married couples have open relationships, and many even forego formalities altogether. In my opinion, this approach to marriage is quite justified. Why bind yourself with obligations and then suffer for the rest of your life? Irene listened to her husband and couldn't believe he was serious. Michael, what about love? He smirked. My dear, love is a concept invented by romantics. Sure, there's some attachment between people, but personally, I don't intend to depend on that feeling. What about me? Irene asked. You're my legal wife, and I don't plan on changing that status for now. To keep things smooth between us, you should ignore certain male whims. Irene realized that her husband had laid out his main condition. Of course, she considered leaving Michael, but the potential damage to her image held her back. She even tried to influence him through her mother-in-law, but was quickly shut down. Irene, who do you think you are compared to my son? Be grateful that Michael married you. Soon, he'll defend his doctoral thesis, and you'll be a professor's wife. As for his infidelity, that's trivial. All men have such instincts, and you can't do anything about it. Accept it, and you'll be fine. Irene followed her mother-in-law's advice. She resigned herself to her husband's constant infidelities, only occasionally crying from unbearable sorrow at night. During those moments, she often thought of Vince and chastised herself for treating him so poorly. Once, she couldn't hold back and told her husband everything to his face. If only you knew how much I regret marrying you. I would have been happy with Vince. Michael couldn't stop laughing, and when he finally caught his breath, he said with disdain. Thinking about your youth? Well, not all is lost, you can still find your former love. Irene mentally wished for divine retribution on her husband. Whether her prayers were heard or it was mere coincidence, shortly after that conversation, Michael had a stroke. The doctors managed to save him from death but warned. Michael, no more excesses. One wrong step, and you could become disabled or die. For a while, the professor adhered to all the guidelines and stopped cheating. But it didn't last long. When Irene found out that her husband had taken another young mistress, she told him exactly what she thought. You'll end up badly, Michael. Remember, if you have another stroke, I won't take care of you. Let your mistresses handle that. Her words hit him hard, and he even raised his hand to her. Shut your mouth. Be careful, or you might end up paralyzed yourself. Liam accidentally witnessed this intense argument. He shouted at his parents. Stop fighting. You sound like bums on the street, yelling and insulting each other. Irene would remember that day for the rest of her life. What struck her most was how her husband patted their son on the head and said in a didactic tone, "Son, bums are people too. You'll eventually realize that we all come into this world the same way and have the same conditions. But some choose the right path, while others, unfortunately, go astray." Liam, already old enough to understand, asked, "Dad, have you figured out which path you're on?" With sadness, Michael replied, "No, son, I haven't figured it out yet." That night, Michael fell seriously ill, and Irene had to call an ambulance. The paramedic quickly diagnosed the situation. "It looks like your husband has had another stroke. All the signs point to it, and if he manages to pull through this time, he can count himself lucky." Michael was conscious but unable to speak. He stared unblinkingly at his wife, a reproach evident in his piercing gaze. In that moment, Irene felt a primal fear. She would later be haunted by the memory of that look and the chilling cold of his hand. Michael didn't recover from the second stroke. He remained in a coma for a week, and the doctors immediately warned his wife and son. "There's virtually no hope for a positive outcome. The damage is too extensive. You need to prepare for the worst." Michael was only 52 years old when his life was abruptly cut short. His funeral was grand and crowded, with colleagues mourning alongside his widow. Irene behaved as her new status required, but after the memorial service, when she was alone with her grief, she remembered her husband's words about choosing the wrong path, spoken shortly before his death. Overwhelmed with despair, she started cursing the deceased out loud. "I made a terrible mistake tying my life to you, and what did I get in the end? Nothing." Nearly 30 years of life flashed through Irene's mind in a few seconds. Vince understood well what was going on in his former lover's soul, having himself experienced the bitterness of loss many times. People hurried past the strange pair, but only one young man dared to comment. "Why are you standing there like statues? Don't block the way." The shout brought Irene back to reality. "Oh, we really are in the way," Vince suggested. "Let's find a more convenient place to talk. How's your time?" "I'm free," she replied. Raising his eyebrows in surprise, he said, "Isn't it a bit early to be retired? I had to leave my job voluntarily. I couldn't stand the intrigues and backstabbing any longer. Nepotism still thrives in the office where I worked for most of my life. One day I got tired of pleasing everyone and handed in my resignation. But I don't regret leaving. I can make a living another way." "Interesting. What do you do now?" "I work part-time at a small company. It's enough for me, and my son gives me money every month. In 2 years, I'll start collecting my pension." "You have a son? How old is he?" 23. "Still quite young." "I have a daughter, she's older, 28. Irene smirked. "Seems you didn't suffer long after I turned you down." Vince didn't respond immediately. "You're wrong, Irene. Heart wounds take a long time to heal. But I'm a realist, and even in my youth, I understood that we only get one life. I met a girl who loved me. She gave me a daughter and made my life a little happier. I'm happy for you. Truly. Thank you. It's nice to hear that from you, but my joy was short-lived. I'm a widower too. My wife passed away last year." "Irene, let's not talk about sad things today. It's such a wonderful day." They remembered the existence of the fourth dimension only when dusk began to fall outside the small cafe. Irene became anxious. "Oh, it's getting dark. I need to get home, or my family will worry." Vince stood up as well. "I hope we meet again. I'm here on business and will probably stay for a while. If you don't mind me asking, what do you do?" "I supply equipment to medical facilities." Irene exclaimed. "Wow! How did you get into medicine? You need to know a lot about that field." Vince smiled. I graduated from the Faculty of Medical Engineering and even worked in Seattle for a while at a company that manufactures modern equipment. Then I decided to start my own business. With a hint of sadness, Irene noted. So, you've done well for yourself? You achieved what you wanted? Yes, in general. But I also have unresolved issues. My daughter keeps me on my toes. She wanted to get married, but less than 2 years later, she's disillusioned with marriage. She's an adult but behaves like a schoolgirl. Irene exclaimed happily. I thought I was the only one. My son is in a similar situation. He worked for just a year after college and then decided to start a family. That would be fine, except he chose a girl who doesn't really care about him. Vince looked at her with curiosity. It's clear you don't like your daughter-in-law. Why should I like her? Not only is she completely inept, everything falls out of her hands. And she flirts with patients at work. She's in the medical field. Yes, she's a nurse at the same hospital where we met today. I don't know what to do. I feel so sorry for my son, but I can't help him. Irene looked at Vince with hope, and he understood her glance correctly. I can't guarantee anything, but maybe I can help your Liam. What does he do for work? He's into computers. He develops some kind of programs and often works through the night. But he's had bad luck with his job. Vince listened attentively, then said. Programmers are in demand everywhere today. I'll try to help your son as an old friend. They arranged another meeting, and Vince walked Irene to the bus stop. This encounter not only awakened pleasant memories in Irene's heart but also reminded her that life doesn't end just because you're a bit over 50. Vince's looks said a lot, and it was no coincidence that he mentioned he was also a widower. Her imagination immediately responded to the call of a lonely soul, creating images of a possible future where she, Irene, finally finds happiness. In these visions, the generous gift-giver was none other than Vince. Meanwhile, Ruby was changing in the locker room when Sydney peeked in. Ruby, I've been looking for you everywhere. I thought you'd already gone home. The expression on the nurse's face and her tone said a lot, and Ruby sighed heavily. Sydney, just spit it out quickly. I'm in a rush. Sydney put on a highly distressed look. Ruby, I was hoping you could help me out. No, Sydney. Not today. My husband and I planned to go to the movies yesterday. Ruby, can't you move it to tomorrow or another day? My life is at stake. I have a shift today. Ruby calmly replied. The schedule hasn't changed, and you knew about your shift. You should have arranged a swap earlier. Sydney grabbed her hands. Ruby, it slipped my mind. I only remembered this evening about my date. Then it's not that serious if you forgot. Ruby, don't nitpick. Haven't you ever been in such a situation? No, I haven't. I keep important things in mind. Ruby picked up her bag and headed for the door. At that moment, Sydney burst into tears. It's easy for you, you have a husband, but I can't seem to get my life together. One thing after another gets in the way. Despair overwhelmed the young nurse, and she smeared her makeup with her tears. I know I'm disorganized and make constant mistakes, but that doesn't mean I don't deserve to be happy. Ruby patted Sydney's back. Don't cry, it'll be all right. Fine, I'll cover for you today, but this is the last time. Sydney ignored the last part and hugged Ruby, kissing her cheek. Ruby, you're a lifesaver. I swear this is the last time. If you want, I can pay you back. Ruby pushed her away gently. I don't need your money, but make sure you tell the head nurse, or we'll both get in trouble. Sydney squealed with joy. Ruby, you're my savior. Don't worry, there are no difficult patients on my shift, but pay extra attention to one patient, Anderson. Who is he? Some relative or friend of the chief doctor, I'm not sure, but he's a difficult man. Thanks for the heads up. I'll try to keep him happy. Sydney ran off, and Ruby had to put her white coat back on. This kind of shift swapping was common in their department, and the head nurse, Erica, encouraged such mutual help. Every nurse in our department should be ready to cover for another at any moment. Just remember to inform me in advance. You understand, I need to be aware of any changes. Though it wasn't always possible to fulfill that last condition, she usually overlooked such lapses. This time, she was also surprised to see Ruby on duty. "Ruby? What are you doing here?" "Sydney asked me to cover her shift for a few hours." "That scoundrel. I'll give her a piece of my mind tomorrow." Erica's heartfelt speech drew the attention of Hannah, who stood with her mouth wide open. The head nurse scolded her. "Hannah, don't open your mouth so wide, or you might tear it." Hannah shot a disapproving look at both the head nurse and Ruby, muttering something under her breath as she walked away. The head nurse nodded in her direction. "She'll report everything to the hospital administrator tomorrow. Such an unpleasant person. Just the sight of her makes my whole body itch." Ruby smiled. "I didn't know that type of allergic reaction existed." The head nurse sighed. "Dear, when you've worked as long as I have, you'll learn a lot more. Alright, you handle things here, I'm off." In their conversation, Ruby forgot to inform Liam that she would be working until 9. But before she could dial her husband's number, he called her. "Ruby, where are you?" "Liam, I'm still at work. A colleague asked me to cover her shift, and I couldn't say no." Her husband indifferently accepted the news. "Alright, work away. I'll go watch the game at Bob's." Having sorted out her family matters, Ruby decided to check on the patients. She knew almost all of them by name, as she administered their injections or set up their IVs daily. She entered room 7 last. She expected to find an elderly man, as this category of patients often had high demands on the medical staff. Instead, a middle-aged man was lying on the bed, his legs crossed. He didn't move when she entered. He demanded, "New here?" Ruby had encountered various types of people, but this level of rudeness was new. Though she was filled with indignation, she answered calmly, "You're mistaken. I've been working here for a long time." Anderson smirked. "I haven't noticed you before. I work in the treatment room. Your floor nurse asked me to cover her shift today." The man suddenly jumped up, then sat back down on the bed. Ruby rushed to him. "Are you feeling unwell? Dizzy?" Strong male arms unexpectedly wrapped around her waist. "No, I'm fine. But I'll feel even better if you sit with me for a while." Stunned, Ruby didn't immediately grasp what had happened. She tried to break free from his grip, but he just laughed. The door to the room was ajar, and Ruby saw a familiar silhouette, Hannah, flash by. The patient followed her gaze and quickly let go. "It seems we were being watched. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to put you in an awkward position. It just happened. Young girls in white coats drive me crazy." Ruby turned abruptly and slammed the door. In the dim corridor, she spotted Hannah lurking. Anger surged through the young nurse, and she snapped. "Hannah, it's not nice to eavesdrop and spy. I don't care what you do with the patients. I wanted to change Anderson's bed linens." Ruby smirked. "Changing linens at 7 in the evening? Remarkable. And how's that? Your shift ended 2 hours ago, yet you're still here. Don't you want to go home?" "Of course I do, but I care about my work." Hannah continued down the corridor, and Ruby watched her leave, thinking, "What an unpleasant woman." That evening, she had no idea what a significant role Hannah would play in her future. A few days later, patient Anderson was discharged, and Ruby forgot about the unpleasant incident involving him. Unexpected changes in her personal life also kept her preoccupied. One evening, Liam came home from work in high spirits. Ruby even thought he might have had a drink, but he laughed. "Unfortunately, I didn't get the chance to have a glass of wine, though there is a reason to celebrate." "Ruby, you can't imagine the opportunity that has come my way." Ruby was burning with curiosity. "Come on, spill it, or I'll bite you." Hearing the noise in the hallway, Irene came out of her room. She immediately seized upon her daughter-in-law's playful threat. "Oh my, what kind of words are those? I'll bite you." Liam gave his wife a meaningful look and whispered, "Please, just ignore it." To his mother, he said, "Mom, maybe it's time to end this silly feud." The woman agreed. "Maybe it is. So, what's got you so excited?" The young man gave his mother a loud kiss on the cheek. "Mom, it's all thanks to you. You introduced me to Vince, and today he called me from Seattle. Long story short, I've been offered a job there." A radiant smile appeared on Irene's face, while Ruby, on the other hand, looked at her husband with unconcealed anxiety. "Liam, are you going to Seattle?" His mother decided to answer for him. "What kind of silly question is that? This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity." Ruby continued to stare at Liam, unblinking. "But what about me?" To diffuse the tension, Liam hugged his wife. "Ruby, as soon as I get settled, I'll let you know, and you'll come join me. I think it will take a month or two, no more." "Why are you so worried?" "I'm not moving to the ends of the earth." "Really, what's there to worry about?" Irene glanced at her daughter-in-law, and Ruby noticed a malicious glint in her eyes. The next day, Liam quit his old job. The allure of a new, unknown life beckoned to him like stars in the evening sky. He was so eager to dive into the whirlwind of exciting events that he decided to leave for Seattle that very day. The women were taken aback by Liam's decision not to delay his departure. During the packing, they kept forgetting this and that. Irene eyed her daughter-in-law with a look of both disdain and something else that made Ruby feel extremely uncomfortable. Fortunately, Irene did not go to the station, giving the young couple a rare chance to say goodbye without her interference. In the end, Ruby couldn't hold back her tears. "Liam, I have a bad feeling about this." He held her in his arms for a long time, whispering, "Sweetheart, everything will be fine. As soon as I get settled, you'll come to me, and we'll never be apart again. We'll buy an apartment there, and soon we can think about having a child." Ruby clung to her husband, repeating, "Everything will be fine, right? Right." The conductor began urging the passengers. "Take your seats, or the train will leave without you." As the train began to move, Ruby blew kisses to her husband and whispered sweet words. He smiled back and drew hearts on the window glass. After Liam's departure, the days dragged on monotonously. Time felt like a thick, colorless mass slowly enveloping Ruby. In this cocoon, she struggled to breathe, desperately longing for a breath of fresh air. Her only solace was the daily calls from her husband. He usually called in the evenings, detailing how things were going in his new job. Ruby listened with bated breath, never daring to interrupt. Only at the end did she always ask the same question. "Liam, when can I come to you? I miss you so much I can hardly stand it." In the first few weeks, he answered optimistically. "Soon, sweetheart. As soon as I find suitable housing for us, I'll let you know right away." Then, those promises started to sound less optimistic, and one day Ruby noticed irritation in her husband's voice. "Sweetheart, why do you ask the same thing every day? I'm trying to sort it out, but it's not that simple, and I barely have any free time. You need to be patient." Ruby was willing to endure any hardship, but living with her mother-in-law in the same apartment was unbearable. Irene watched her every move, and the worst part was that she did it silently. To make her life more bearable, Ruby started taking night shifts. Erica was surprised by the young nurse's unusual request. "Ruby, why this sudden desire to work nights? What will your husband think about it?" "My husband is in Seattle right now. He got a good job offer there, and my relationship with my mother-in-law is very strained." "I see. All right, Ruby, I'll grant your request. But I'm seriously concerned that after night shifts, it will be hard for you to work in the procedure room. You understand that I'm taking a risk by putting you on night shifts. Erica, you know very well that there's always a chance to get a couple of hours of sleep. Most of our patients are scheduled cases, and emergencies are rare. When Ruby informed Irene that she would be working night shifts twice a week, her mother-in-law unexpectedly winked at her. Feeling lonely? Need some warmth? At first, Ruby didn't understand what Irene was insinuating. What warmth, Irene? What are you talking about? Her mother-in-law continued her mockery. Come on, don't play dumb. I know all about your escapades, and Liam will soon know too. Irene gave her a scorching look and disappeared into her room. That evening, when Liam called, Ruby immediately noticed the change in his tone. Ruby, Mom told me that you're working nights now. Is there really no one else who can work those shifts? Or is there another reason? She tried to explain the situation to her husband, but he didn't believe her. Stop making my mother out to be the villain. You're younger and could be more accommodating, or at least keep quiet sometimes. Anyway, I don't like your new work schedule. Change it, or we might have serious problems. Do you understand? Ruby quietly murmured. Yes, Liam, I understand. Then think it over while there's still time. But Ruby couldn't think things through properly because her health failed her. One morning, she felt nauseous as soon as she got out of bed. Forgetting about caution, she ran to the bathroom. Naturally, the noise caught Irene's attention. She stood in the doorway, watching her daughter-in-law, without a hint of sympathy. While Ruby was writhing from the spasms, Irene accused her of sins. Well, dear, have you had your fun? Not that I expected anything else. For people like you, morality doesn't exist. You behave like base animals. Only fragments of the accusatory speech reached the miserable girl, but she understood Irene's reproach. When the nausea subsided, Ruby didn't cry or beg for mercy. She stood firmly to defend her honor. What are you talking about, Irene? I'm speaking the truth. You got pregnant, and who knows from whom? Ruby raised her voice. Don't you dare talk to me like that. Your accusations have nothing to do with reality. Yes, I am pregnant, but I only found out a few days ago. I haven't told Liam yet. Irene shook her head. He'll be thrilled to know his wife made a baby while he was away. A furious grimace twisted Irene's face. No, Ruby, your plans won't come true. I'll open my son's eyes. Let him know how you entertain yourself in his absence. That's why you needed those night shifts. But every secret eventually comes to light, and I have proof of your antics. A new wave of nausea hit Ruby's throat, and she couldn't respond to her mother-in-law. When she left the bathroom, Irene was waiting by the door. She threw a thick envelope in Ruby's face. What do you have to say to that? The envelope fell to the floor, spilling photographs. Ruby managed to glance at only a few before losing consciousness. She woke up to slaps on her cheeks and Irene's loud shouting. What are you playing at? Get up. Ruby could barely stand, everything was a blur, and she had to hold on to the wall as she made her way to her room. Irene followed her. Why are you just lying there? Ruby struggled to sit up. Irene's tone softened slightly. You'll be late for work. Go on, we'll talk in the evening. Ruby spent the entire day in a daze, going through the motions of her work mechanically and answering colleagues' questions automatically. Her mind was devoid of any coherent thoughts. Unexpectedly, Liam called before lunch. His voice was harsh, and he didn't bother to choose his words carefully. If you thought you could deceive me, you don't know me very well. Good thing my mom is vigilant and warned me in time. I even got to enjoy pictures of your actions. In a weary voice, Ruby replied. Liam, there's nothing compromising in those photos. They just show my usual workday. And that fat guy with the greasy face holding you by the waist, that's normal too. No, that's not normal. He already apologized for the inappropriate joke. And your pregnancy, is that also an inappropriate joke? Yes, I'm pregnant, but it's your child. A wild laugh deafened Ruby, followed by hurtful words. Ruby, don't lie to me. This conversation is over. I don't believe you. Do you understand? Ruby whispered. Liam, listen to me. I thought I made it clear that I have nothing more to say to you. And please, don't bother me with your calls. I won't change my mind. The phone disconnected, and Ruby sat staring blankly. Sydney found her in that state and started shaking her. Ruby, what's wrong? Are you okay? Ruby burst into tears. Soon Erica arrived, and upon learning about Ruby's situation, the head nurse tried to comfort her. Ruby, don't panic. Believe me, things will work out. Your husband will come back, and you two will sort everything out. Right now, you need to think about the baby. Take a few days off and rest. Erica's maternal warmth was comforting and gave Ruby hope. She went home, where Irene was waiting impatiently in the hallway. Pack your things and leave. Liam said he doesn't want you in our apartment. I still don't understand what he saw in you. My son is such an intelligent programmer, and you, a country girl, need to go back to where you came from. Irene laughed maliciously, but her words flew past Ruby's consciousness. She tried not to think about what lay ahead and forbade herself from dwelling on the past. Her mind focused solely on the thought, I need to leave this house as soon as possible. Irene supervised the packing process. As Ruby reached for the door handle, Irene shouted. Leave the keys on the table, Irene demanded. Otherwise, you might get a bad idea and rob us. You country folk are all the same. Ruby took a deep breath and said. Are you judging by your own standards, Irene? Do you think I don't know about your tax evasion? One day, you'll get caught, and no connections will help you. This precise strike left Irene clutching her heart. Ruby knew her mother-in-law too well and saw through her frequent tactics. She didn't rush to offer help but instead turned and slammed the door. Ruby didn't know where to go or what to do. She wandered aimlessly around the city for several hours, ignoring Liam's calls. Only when it got dark did she head to the bus station. She already imagined the rumors that would spread in her village upon her return. But Ruby, like her mother Clarice, had always been indifferent to gossip. What concerned her more at that moment was how her mother would react to everything that had happened. In recent years, her mother's health had deteriorated significantly. She often fell ill but never took her treatment seriously, joking instead. All my ailments are due to nerves. Ruby knew her mother wasn't exaggerating. She had witnessed drunken scenes her father created almost every evening. One night, in a drunken rage, he raised a hand against Ruby because he didn't like her response about her lessons. Clarice managed to shield her daughter, taking the brunt of her husband's fury. After the assault, her father smugly said, "Did you get what you deserved, protector? How many times have I told you to stay out of it?" The woman showed no signs of life, and her drunken husband kicked her in the side one last time. When that didn't wake her, he muttered calmly, "I'll teach you some manners," and went off to bed. Ruby, thinking her mother was no longer breathing, ran to the neighbors. Soon, an ambulance arrived, followed by the police. They restrained the bewildered father and shoved him into the car as he screamed, "You have no right. Let me go. This is all a conspiracy. I've never touched my wife." But no one believed the drunkard. The day after the beating, Clarice's condition worsened. It took almost 2 months for her to recover from a severe concussion and bruises. During this time, Ruby lived with their neighbor Tricia, who treated her kindly and constantly scolded her father. "Ray, your father was a handful even when he was young. He took after his father, who drank heavily and didn't live past 40. Ray will meet the same fate if he doesn't change his ways. If I were your mother, I wouldn't forgive him this time. He could kill you both one day." Clarice didn't forgive her husband, and he was sent to serve time in a low-security prison. For about 2 years, he wrote letters begging for forgiveness, but then the letters stopped. Ruby's mother told her he would never bother them again. When Ruby was in the 7th grade, her mother remarried. Tim was nothing like her father. He always dressed neatly and wasn't a drinker. Most importantly, he treated Ruby well, calling her his daughter from the very first day. He was a bus driver and often took her on his routes. "I can't show you the whole world, sweetheart, but I'll make sure you see the best parts of it." He loved to joke and always kept the passengers entertained. Ruby liked her new stepfather and did everything she could to make him like her. Clarice was happy that peace and tranquility had finally returned to their home. One day, Ruby overheard her mother confiding in the neighbor. "Trisha, it's funny how life turns out. I never expected this. Tim courted me in my youth too, but I chose Ray because he seemed braver. Love blinds you, and you ignore the flaws. You, Clarice, didn't want to see what the whole village saw. But now you have a chance to be happy. Tim is a good man. He won't let anyone hurt you, and he loves Ruby like his own." When Ruby graduated high school and had to choose a profession, it was her stepfather who advised her to go to medical school. "It's a noble profession, and you'll always have a job. Your mother heals people, and you can continue the family tradition. Start as a nurse, and then maybe go to university if you don't get married first." Ruby found the 3 years of nursing school painfully long. When her stepfather reminded her not to stop there, she replied sharply, "Maybe I'll consider university later, but right now I can't bear the thought of more years of lectures and studying." But aside from the exhaustion from studying, Ruby had another compelling reason for her decision. That reason was Liam. They had met at a student party and immediately liked each other. Liam was in his final year, just like Ruby. They had a lot in common and soon realized they wanted more than just romantic moonlit dates. When Clarice learned her daughter planned to marry a guy she had known for only 3 months, she nearly had a heart attack and tried to convince her. "Ruby, marriage is very serious. You need to know someone well before tying your life to theirs." Tim defended Ruby. "Clarice, how old were you when you got married?" She was taken aback. 19. "I don't see the point of this." He laughed. "Ruby is 20, yet you still treat her like a child. Let her make her own decisions. She won't forgive herself or you if she misses her chance at happiness." Ruby's parents did everything to make the wedding memorable for the newlyweds and the guests. Tim used all the money he had saved for a new SUV to cover the wedding expenses. Because of his generosity, they managed to pay for everything. Tim and his wife took Irene's refusal to attend the wedding as a personal insult. "Seems like we didn't get lucky with the in-laws, but we're not proud people, we'll manage," Tim said. Since Irene refused to acknowledge her new family, Tim and Clarice kept their distance too. Clarice avoided discussing it in front of Ruby and told her husband. "The most important thing is that Ruby and Liam are happy together. The rest doesn't matter." But recent events had dashed their hopes. Ruby didn't want to worry her parents prematurely, so she didn't tell them about her sudden visit. She remembered the bus schedule well and delayed her departure as much as possible. Deep down, she still hoped for a miracle that would change everything and prevent her from having to go home. But as the station clock ticked away the minutes, no miracle happened. She was about to head to the cashier to buy a ticket for the last bus to Winstown when something soft and warm touched her hands. Ruby looked down to see a 4-year-old girl smiling up at her. "What's your name?" Ruby surprised beyond measure. But she managed to conceal her emotions and replied calmly. "I'm Ruby." "And who are you?" "Everyone calls me Kaylee." "Except Samantha calls me Kay," the little girl explained. Immediately, Ruby wondered who this Samantha was. Kaylee clarified. "Samantha is my daddy's sister. She takes care of me instead of my mom, who left us." Ruby glanced around, trying to spot the unfamiliar Samantha, but Kaylee happily pointed her out. "There's Samantha. I wanted a drink, and she went to get some water." Approaching them was a friendly brunette in her 30s with a short haircut. She eyed Ruby suspiciously at first, then turned her attention to Kaylee. "Kaylee, how many times have I told you not to bother strangers?" Feeling awkward, Ruby interjected. "It's okay, we were just having a nice chat." Kaylee added eagerly. "Her name's Ruby, like my teacher at daycare." The girl turned to Ruby again. "I used to go to daycare. There were lots of kids, but then we moved. Where I live now with Daddy, there's no daycare, so Samantha comes to keep me company." Kaylee seemed about to say more, but then a voice crackled over the intercom announcing that the bus to Winstown would depart in 5 minutes from Platform 7. Ruby hurried to the ticket counter. "I haven't bought my ticket yet." Quickly purchasing it, she dashed towards the bus, already running late. Once aboard, Ruby scanned the seats for a spot and heard a familiar voice say, "Ruby, over here. Samantha will hold me, and you can sit." Ruby squeezing through the luggage cluttering the aisle, Samantha greeted her with a warm smile. "Get comfortable. I apologize for being nosy, but are you visiting relatives?" Samantha asked. "I haven't seen you around Winstown before." "No, I'm here permanently," Ruby replied. "I'm originally from here, but I've been away for a long time. First for college, then I got married." Samantha looked closely at Ruby. From her tone, she could tell the young woman had endured personal tragedy. She reached out and touched Ruby's hand. "I'm sorry again. I see I unintentionally touched a sore spot." Ruby tried to smile. "It's okay. I never realized before how hard it is to carry pain inside." Samantha didn't reply. She gazed out the window, lost in her thoughts. Little Kaylee curled up in her arms, softly dozing. Samantha looked at her with tenderness. "It's nice to be this little." "No worries, no troubles," she murmured. "Where's the girl's mom?" Ruby asked. Samantha sighed. "That's a long story. My brother hasn't had much luck in life," Samantha began. "The first time he got burned was in his youth when he married a classmate. Shortly after the wedding, he went off to the army, but his young wife didn't wait for his return. After that, Joe swore off marriage altogether. He poured all his energy into building his business, and things were going quite well for him. Around the age of 35, every man starts craving stability and a cozy home. Driven by these feelings, my brother fell under the spell of a wealthy girl." Ruby tried to listen to Samantha's story, but exhaustion and recent stress took their toll, and she drifted into a pleasant forgetfulness. She wasn't asleep, she heard everything Samantha said. Moreover, she saw the girl named Amalia, who completely shattered Joe's life. Events in Ruby's vision unfolded swiftly, and she actively participated in them. Just before the climax, she heard a familiar voice right above her ear. "Ruby, we're here. Wake up," Samantha said with a laugh. "Sorry, I didn't realize I'd fallen asleep and missed the end of your story," Ruby apologized. "It's okay. We'll have plenty of time to chat. Once you get settled, come visit us," Samantha invited warmly. "But I don't know where you live," Ruby admitted. "The Rauch family home. Everyone in Winstown knows it. Just ask around, and they'll direct you right to the gate," Samantha assured her. They got off the bus together and went their separate ways at the intersection. Ruby headed towards her mother's house, struggling to recall anything about the Rauch family. But that name meant nothing to her. A few days spent at her childhood home helped Ruby find some emotional balance. The only complication was her morning sickness. At first, she didn't want to tell her mother she was pregnant, but Clarice figured it out the next day. "Ruby, are you pregnant?" The question caught her off guard, but she knew she couldn't deceive her mother. "Mom, how did you know? You've lost weight, your face is pale, and yesterday at dinner, I noticed you hardly ate anything." Ruby chuckled. "You could join the detective force. Why bother? I'm perfectly happy at the clinic. By the way, Sinclair recently retired, so you could take her place. We're having trouble getting young people to come here. Well, here I am. I'll probably take you up on that offer. Though I'm not sure they'll accept me once they find out I'm pregnant. They will. There's just one thing that bothers me. How could he leave you knowing you're pregnant? Or did you not tell your husband about the baby? No, I told him. But my mother-in-law beat me to it. She said something to Liam that I'm too embarrassed to repeat. I can imagine. Don't worry, my girl. As long as your father and I are alive, we won't let anyone harm you. Clarice spoke confidently, which gave Ruby strength. Her stepfather also showed understanding of her difficult situation. Don't worry, Ruby. Your mother and I will help you and raise the baby. With these words, Ruby understood her mother had told her husband everything. She felt awkward about Tim. After all, he wasn't her biological father. She thought he probably judged her inwardly, but her opinion changed when her stepfather said unexpectedly, "If I were younger, I'd challenge your Liam to a duel and knock him flat on his back. No real man acts like that, he's a scoundrel. But don't worry, he'll get what's coming to him." Unexpectedly to herself, Ruby began to defend her husband. It's not his fault, it's all Irene. She constantly turned him against me, calling me a country bumpkin. The 6 months I spent with her felt like an eternity. In a way, it's even good I had to leave. The man continued to be indignant. She doesn't like country folk. But who is she herself? An intelligent person would never flaunt their background. Take Joe, for example. Such a well-bred man. Ruby widened her eyes. And who's Joe? Just then, Clarice entered the living room. He's the businessman who moved in with us. Tim, they've been living in Winstown for about 3 years now. Probably closer to 4. They bought land and built a house there. Ruby, you must remember, construction started before you left. Clarice looked at her daughter as if she wanted to stimulate her thought process. Ruby dug into her memory and recalled how she and her friends were annoyed by the tall fence blocking the shortcut to the river. I remembered. We wanted to pass through that construction site to avoid going around, but the guard chased us away. So, I remember the construction, but I've never seen the businessman himself. Tim interrupted the conversation. Clarice, how long are you going to stand there? Put the potatoes on the table before they get cold. The woman hurried and placed a bowl of steaming potatoes on the table. We got so caught up in conversation that we forgot about everything else in the world. Let's eat, Ruby. Clarice served her husband a portion of the traditional dish. Tim works at Rouch's, she said suddenly. Ruby exclaimed. So that's the Joe Rouch? You know him? Clarice asked. Well, no, not yet, but I rode the bus with Samantha, Rouch's sister, and Kaylee was with her. Clarice smiled broadly. Oh, that mischievous Kaylee. Tim agreed. No kidding. Joe must find it tough raising a daughter alone. It would have been much easier if it were a boy. Ruby remembered Samantha's story from the bus, which had left her utterly puzzled. She glanced at her mother, knowing she was well versed in all the village gossip. Where did the girl's mother go? The child had a mother, didn't she? Clarice settled next to her daughter, casting a glance at her husband. Your father doesn't care for gossip, but I'll tell you everything later, she assured. Tim waved his hand resignedly. Just tell her already. Why are all women like this? He exclaimed. The hostess smirked and asked. Like what? You all love to gossip. You have no idea how much energy you waste discussing others. Well, thanks for dinner. I'm out, Tim said as he left the table. With father gone, Clarice moved closer to Ruby. I can't vouch for the accuracy of the rumors circulating about this family, so I'll tell you what I know for sure. Joe's wife, Amalia, never appeared when the house was being built. People said the businessman was married, but no one ever saw his wife. Well, Joe brought her over with their daughter. But what's surprising is she never strolled with a stroller. An elderly woman took care of the child. We all thought she was the grandmother until Trisha found out they had hired a nanny. Mom, it's not unusual. Wealthy families always hire nannies, Ruby replied. Then rumors spread around the village that Amalia wasn't the real mother. That she didn't give birth to the child. She only visited our clinic twice. The first time for a cold, the second time for advice on what to give the baby for an upset stomach. And what about Amalia? Ruby asked. Oh, nothing much. She appeared out of nowhere and disappeared just as unexpectedly. Left the girl with her father. A nanny cared for her for 2 years, then her sister came. Joe himself is a decent man. Greets everyone, helps out when asked. He even started a new construction project. Remember the old building where there used to be a school for deaf children? You mean those ruins on the outskirts? Exactly those ruins. Our businessman decided to turn them into a camp for children. He presented the project at our clinic and held a meeting with the locals. So, Joe is funding the camp out of his own pocket? Well, some other businessmen chipped in too, but Joe's overseeing everything. Personally, I support such an initiative. We have wonderful surroundings here, the forest, the river, clean air. Clarice fell into thought, and Ruby decided not to disturb her. She stepped out onto the porch to admire the setting sun. Footsteps behind her signaled Clarice's approach. Enjoying the view? Clarice asked. Without turning around, Ruby replied. Mom, there's nowhere else as beautiful. You can't imagine how glad I am to be home again. Moved by her daughter's admission, Clarice hugged her and said. Your father and I are glad too. Don't lose hope, you still have plenty ahead of you in life, and you'll definitely should save a child. Ruby pulled away sharply. Mom, what? I haven't even thought about that. Okay, don't be mad. I just said it, just in case, Clarice said. Ruby didn't notice how quickly the week flew by. She involuntarily remembered how time dragged slowly at her mother-in-law's house, and once again silently thanked her lucky stars that she wasn't still there. She enjoyed taking care of everyday household chores, and in the evenings, when Clarice returned from work, they tended to the garden together. Mom, so much has changed here, so many flowers. You never used to garden. Ruby exclaimed. Clarice laughed. It's not me, it's all Tim. He decided to decorate everything with flowers. He said instead of buying bouquets, I should plant roses all around the house. Did Tim really create all this beauty with his own hands? He did everything himself. He researched online which varieties thrive best and how to care for them. Roses are very picky plants. If something's not right, they wither immediately. As the women discussed rose care rules, they didn't notice a woman and a little girl approaching the house. Ruby jumped when she heard the child's cheerful voice. Ruby, where are you? Surprised, Clarice said. Looks like we have guests. The woman struggled to straighten her back and headed towards the gate. Who could be visiting us? Children's laughter rang out. That's me, Kaylee. Is Ruby here? I'm here. Coming right up. Ruby hurried to the gate, but Clarice was already leading the guests down the path to the house. Oh, I don't know whether to invite you inside or to the gazebo, she pondered aloud. Samantha reassured the hostess. Clarice, just a moment. We came to remind Ruby about the promise she forgot. Ruby made a funny face and crossed her arms. I confess, I completely forgot. It's so nice at home. I relaxed, and everything slipped my mind. While the adults exchanged pleasantries, Kaylee decided to explore the plants. She gently touched the roses and said, Please don't prick me, it'll hurt. Samantha warned the little girl. Kaylee, don't touch the flowers, you might get pricked. No, Samantha, these flowers aren't mean, they promised not to prick me. So when are we going for a walk? You said we'd visit Ruby and then go for a walk. Samantha smiled. Well, there you go, she's been talking about you all week. Where's Ruby? Why isn't she coming to us? Did she like you for some reason? Kaylee, I liked you too from the moment you touched me and asked who I was. Wait for me, I'll just wash my hands, and then we'll go for a walk. I'll show you my favorite spots. We also have our favorite spots where Kaylee and I like to spend time, Samantha added. For over an hour, they strolled through picturesque surroundings. Kaylee eagerly picked wildflowers and tried to catch grasshoppers. Samantha kept an eye on her niece while chatting with Ruby. I'll be leaving soon. I have my own things to attend to. Been here a whole month, finding inspiration, Samantha remarked. Are you an artist? Ruby asked. Sort of. I design beautiful and comfortable clothes instead of painting, Samantha replied. Wow. It's the first time I've seen a living designer up close. You know, back in school, I dreamed of everyone dressing beautifully. Our parents are in medicine, and I was also predicted to have a medical future. But I didn't betray my dream. You can't imagine what it was like when my parents and brother found out I lied to them. I pretended to study medicine for almost 2 years. If it's not too personal, what do your parents do? My mom is a psychotherapist, she has her own clinic. And my dad, well, his specialization shocks all our acquaintances. He's a medical examiner, deals with corpses. Ruby, you won't believe it, but our dad is a fanatic about his profession. He says he can't imagine himself in any other role. Not surprising. It's a calling. Samantha, can I ask you a rather blunt question? Samantha paused. I think I know what you're curious about. There are various rumors circulating in Windstown. There's even a version that Kaylee was kidnapped and is being hidden here. I haven't heard that yet. I don't know the backstory. I mostly live with my parents. They moved to Philadelphia. When Joe married Amalia, it was like he found a new lease on life. He always dreamed of having children. But Amalia had some issues. Then she disappeared for almost a year and came back with Kaylee. Long story short, I never saw her pregnant. She's always been strange, with weird things happening to her often. So, I wasn't even surprised when I found out she ran away from Joe, leaving him with a 2-month-old daughter. And your brother, did he look for her? Why bother? You see, Joe isn't the type to plead. He's a tough guy and never airs his problems in public. You really should meet him sometime. Joe's a very interesting person. He travels a lot and reads smart books. Twilight was quickly settling in, so the girls hurried home. Kaylee kissed Ruby goodbye. Come visit me, I'll show you my dolls. Ruby promised the little girl she would visit her soon. After the walk, Ruby's mood improved, and the emotional pain felt a little lighter. The initial excitement of the first days had faded, replaced by new problems. A clinic employee who had planned to retire suddenly changed her mind. Clarice shared this news with her daughter with bitterness. Clearly, someone told her I wanted to bring you into that place. Though Ruby was disappointed, she supported her mother. Mom, there's still time. I'll look for something myself. You won't find anything. Jobs are in high demand here, and you're still pregnant. Tim joined the discussion, having previously been engrossed in watching television. Daughter, I suggest you go see Joe, he said. Clarice didn't like this idea. Tim, you talk as if your Joe is the emperor of the earth. How will he help? He'll help. He helps everyone. And Ruby won't be turned away. They're about to set up a camp soon, and they'll need staff. When will that be? Ruby might have already given birth by the time this camp starts operating. Tim raised his voice. I'm telling you, let her go. Maybe there's a job for Ruby at their place. And what will she do there? Scrub floors? I'd rather she stay at home than do menial work. Ruby sensed the tension escalating and hurried to calm her parents. Okay, don't argue because of me. Mom, Dad are right, and I'll go see your Joe today. Besides, Samantha invited me. Ruby spoke convincingly, quieting the spouses. Clarice, however, sighed frequently, indicating her displeasure. Ruby felt neither fear nor nervousness when she rang the bell at the gate of the elite mansion. The guard immediately let her in and showed her where to go. The two-story cottage and its surroundings amazed the girl's imagination. She expected to see a luxurious interior inside the house, but it was functional and devoid of excess. Samantha led her through the ground floor, chatting along the way. Joe likes comfort and simplicity, so everything here is functional with no frills. By the way, he's home right now. I can introduce you. Ruby was a bit embarrassed, but there was no turning back. Samantha, I didn't just come for a visit. I need any kind of job. Why do you sound so unsure? It's just awkward. Oh, come on. My brother is someone who considers helping the needy his main duty. He's always been that kind-hearted, even back in school, and everyone took advantage of him. The stairs leading to the second floor creaked, and Ruby saw a man descending. Samantha, what are you saying? By your description, I must seem like Superman. Here he is, in the flesh. Joe, let me introduce you to my acquaintance, Ruby. Joe gave his sister a mocking glance. Samantha, be simpler. Pretending doesn't suit you. He extended his hand to the guest. Joe Rauch, nice to meet you. Kaylee has been talking about you for days. My daughter has a good sense for people. She never gets it wrong in that regard. Ruby smiled. Yes, you have a wonderful girl. Thank you, but my intuition tells me you didn't come here just to praise my daughter. Am I right? Yes, I'm looking for work. I really need it. I'll try to help you. But such important matters aren't settled on the stairs. Let's go to my office. Joe headed upstairs, and Ruby hurried after him. They talked for almost 2 hours. For the first time in her life, Ruby felt relaxed and at ease alone with a complete stranger. He listened attentively without interrupting. When she fell silent, he remarked solemnly. You're so young and have already experienced so much hardship. I understand you very well because I've also been through a lot in my life. I know there are various rumors circulating about me and my runaway wife. Ruby blushed involuntarily. A person can't carry the burden of problems for long. I'm quite private, not even my own sister knows everything about me. But with you, Ruby, I feel very comfortable. You have a way of putting people at ease, and with you, I can open up. Joe paused, carefully choosing his words, and then, with great delicacy, shared with Ruby something he hadn't told anyone else yet. My second wife, Amalia, had issues with her health and couldn't conceive. I really wanted to have a complete family. Knowledgeable people suggested that this dream could be realized through surrogacy. You're in medicine, you've probably heard of this method. Of course, it's quite common today. We decided to try it ourselves. We found a good woman, drew up the contract properly, and concocted a believable story with my wife so that no one would suspect anything. My parents still don't suspect what actually happened. At first, my wife was eager to become a mother. She strictly followed the doctor's recommendations, but after 6 months of waiting, Amalia couldn't bear it anymore. Before Kaylee was born, she ran away. I found her quickly and brought her back, hoping she would come to her senses. Ruby asked cautiously. Did you build this cottage with the expectation that among strangers here, no one would ask unnecessary questions? That's right. You understand how delicate this matter is. Besides, it was too late to back down. Our surrogate mother didn't want another child and decided she didn't want to be a mother anymore, and neither did my wife. Right after the birth of our daughter, she started drinking. Several times I pulled her out of bars and brought her back home. It made her angry, and she would run away again. And then she said something that shocked me. She said she didn't feel attached to the girl and would never love her. She even suggested putting the child in an orphanage. You understand, after such statements, I had to isolate the child and hire a nanny. But Amalia wasn't bothered by this, and she finally left me. Your story is worse than mine. This is the first time I've heard of such a case. Amalia is an extraordinary woman, she likes to surprise. In fact, that's why I fell for her. I thought with such a bright woman I wouldn't be bored, but it turned out like this. But you have a wonderful daughter. That's for sure. Now Kaylee is the meaning of my life. But it's hard for me alone to cope with all the responsibilities. Business and charity take up all my time. I even cut down on sleep to 5 hours just to keep up. So I'm happy to accept any help. Samantha will be leaving soon, and I was already thinking of hiring a local woman to look after Kaylee. And then you came along. I don't know, will my offer suit you? It will. I can even clean the house so I'm not sitting idle. No, that's unnecessary. For me, the main thing is my daughter. Ruby flew home on wings. She told her parents every detail, keeping the story of the businessman's daughter's birth secret. Although Kaylee was a very active child, she listened to Ruby. Of course, sometimes the girl misbehaved. Ruby, just don't tell Dad anything about me, or he gets really upset when I'm naughty. Just don't misbehave. Ruby, I try, but I can't because my hands and feet are disobedient. The 4-year-old girl had a very rich imagination, and in the evening she entertained Ruby with scary stories she made up herself. One day Ruby came up with the idea of writing down all these stories. Kaylee, I will write down what you come up with, and then when you grow up, you will read your creations. This proposal inspired the girl, and in the evening she announced to her father. Dad, Ruby and I decided that I will be a writer. And what else have you decided? The girl didn't answer that question but unexpectedly shifted the conversation to a completely different topic. But first, she gave a significant glance at Ruby's protruding belly and then asked. Dad, is it true that Ruby has a baby in her tummy? Ruby didn't know where to hide from embarrassment. Joe also looked away, but Kaylee was waiting for an answer. Dad, is it a tiny baby? The man struggled to speak. Yes, he's still very small now, but he'll grow bigger, he managed to reply. Dad, is it my little brother? This question shocked both the girl's father and Ruby. But Kaylee didn't wait for them to recover, she answered herself. Of course, having a little sister is better because you can play with her, but you can cuddle with a little brother. The girl started pulling Ruby's hand. Ruby, will you let me cuddle your little boy? Of course, Ruby had no choice but to agree with Kaylee's proposal. Martin's birth coincided with another significant event, the opening of a children's camp. On that day, Ruby had just been discharged from the hospital, and Joe insisted she attend the opening. He brought her to the newly built building. The young mother involuntarily became the center of attention. Villagers congratulated her, not forgetting to hint that now the businessman had a full set of children. Joe heard everything but wasn't embarrassed at all. After the ceremony ended with fireworks, Joe offered to drive her home. You can't imagine how eager Kaylee is to see the baby. Ruby promised that when the baby gets a bit stronger, they would visit. Ruby, would you like to move in with us? I'm offering this without any ulterior motive. It would just be more convenient for you here, with all amenities at hand, and I won't feel lonely. Besides, as you've probably noticed, everyone assumes we're married. Yes, I've noticed, Ruby replied. Ruby, maybe we can turn these two misfortunes into one happiness. This proposal didn't unsettle the girl because deep down, she hoped to hear those words. She wasn't entirely sure of her feelings yet, but she was drawn to this kind man who had helped her in a difficult time. The children's shouts were so loud that Ruby had to calm them down a bit. Kaylee, Martin, you'll make me deaf. Can't you stop yelling? Her son looked at her indulgently. Mom, everyone shouts in football. It's the way it's supposed to be. Ruby turned to her daughter. Kaylee, I never thought you'd play football like a boy. Mom, I didn't think so either, but it's so much fun. By the way, women also play football and even compete in the Olympics. Football players, did you forget about dinner? We didn't forget, Mom, but we have to wait for Dad. He promised to come early today and said we'd all go together to the city, to the zoo, 5-year-old Martin replied. The woman agreed. All right, let's wait for Dad. Suddenly, a doorbell rang across the lawn where the children were playing, and they all raced each other to get there. It's Dad who's arrived. Hooray! We're going to the zoo. Dad promised me yesterday. Ruby felt a tremor in her heart, an unfamiliar force compelling her to follow towards the door. By the time she reached them, the children were returning with disappointed faces. Kaylee said dispiritedly. Mom, no need to hurry, it's not Dad, just some stranger. At that moment, a security guard appeared. Ruby, they're asking for you. A foreboding feeling gripped her. She stepped outside, scanning around. She hadn't noticed a car nearby, from which a man with a trendy beard emerged. Confidently, he headed towards her. Well, Ruby. She sighed. Liam. You didn't recognize me. I thought as much. You've forgotten your husband quite quickly. If you haven't forgotten, we've been divorced for 5 years. And you were the one who initiated it. I don't understand why you're here now. Indeed, Liam bore little resemblance to the unsure youth she had hastily married years ago. He strolled along the sidewalk, shamelessly eyeing her from head to toe. Curious why I've come? Yes, I'd like to unravel that mystery. It's simple, Ruby. I wanted to see my son. After all, I do have a son, right? Ruby remained silent, her entire being filled with the burning hatred she had only felt once in her life, when her mother-in-law had kicked her out of the house. Liam stroked his beard, never taking his eyes off her. You thought you could hide from me in your village? I called you, but you never answered. I changed my phone a long time ago. Get out of here before I have security remove you. You've become quite tough, haven't you? No. I've always been like this. Yeah, you quickly fell into the arms of a businessman. Good for you, Ruby. Keep it up. Her ex-husband approached her almost uncomfortably close, and Ruby felt the smell of alcohol emanating from him. She couldn't help but remark. Are you completely out of your mind? Drunk and driving? Why do you care about me so much? You don't give a damn about me. Everyone doesn't give a damn about me, even my own mother. The old witch ruined my life. Now she's suffering herself. And you're no better than my mother. All you women think about is money. Liam, did you come here just to insult me? You better leave, or you'll definitely regret it. My husband should be here any moment now. Oh, you even have a husband. And I'm still single. I came here, imagine, to see my son. I want to talk to my heir. The boy who peeked out, he's my son. Bring him here. Darkness filled Ruby's eyes instantly. She remembered her perpetually drunk father and his fists, which in her fear seemed enormous. She remembered her mother applying thick layers of powder to cover the bruises on her face. A storm rose in her soul, and she grabbed Liam by the shirt collar, hissing. He's not your son. You abandoned your child, and back then, I had an abortion. Liam immediately deflated. I thought, they told me, you had a boy. Let me tell you again, he's not your son. Forget your way here. Lowering his head, the man walked back to his car. Ruby waited until the car disappeared around the bend before returning home. The children immediately noticed her somber mood and bombarded her with questions. Mom, what did that mister want? Did he say something to upset you? Kaylee asked. Martin also showed concern for his mother. Mom, you should have let me handle him. Dad taught me some moves for situations like that. Ruby chose not to explain the reason for her sudden sadness to the children. But after Liam's visit, she couldn't shake off the unease all day. Childhood fears resurfaced, fueled by her vivid imagination. Ruby anxiously awaited Joe's return and poured out everything to him. "Joe, I know him. Like his mother, he loves causing trouble in secret." Joe hugged his wife and comforted her like a child. "You're imagining fears. He won't come here again. I'll ask security not to let him near our home. And you said the right things to him. Let him lose any hope." "Joe, I'm afraid of losing everything. I only learned what true happiness is with you. Now it feels like that happiness is slipping away, like rainwater through my fingers." She buried her face in Joe's chest and broke into tears. "Joe, I'm afraid I won't be able to hold on to it." He stroked her hair gently and whispered, "Don't be afraid. You're with me, and together we can handle any difficulty. We've already been through so much together." Joe's words reassured Ruby. However, for several weeks, she feared going out on the street and jumped every time the gate bell rang. 6 months passed since Liam's visit. Clarice rarely called her daughter because there was little need for mobile communication in the village where messages could be conveyed in minutes in person. So Ruby was very surprised when her mobile phone rang and her mother's number appeared on the screen. Clarice sounded extremely agitated. "Ruby, haven't you heard anything yet?" "What should I have heard? Have you watched the news today? It's a major incident." "No, I don't watch those programs at all. Can you tell me what happened?" "Liam. It seems he's been in an accident. I recognized his car, and the license plates match." Ruby was struck not so much by the misfortune that had befallen her ex-husband, but by the fact that her mother knew such details. "Mom, did he come to see you too?" "He did, dear. He asked where you lived. He really wanted to see his son." "So, you gave him our exact address?" "I did. I'm sorry, but I thought he was still the father." "Okay, Mom, don't worry. I'm not mad at you." "What did they say on the news?" "It's nothing good. They said the driver of a passenger car was drunk and crashed into a truck. In short, it was Liam, the cause of the accident. There's nothing left of the car. Apparently, he's alive, but you know how such accidents can turn out. Liam didn't survive the accident." Ruby received the news from her former friend and colleague, Sydney. After the crash, Liam was taken to the same hospital where Ruby had worked in her early years after college. The news of her ex-husband's death shook Ruby deeply. She regretted not allowing him to talk to Martin and, most of all, she regretted lying to Liam. "Why did I do that? There was nothing that could have changed. Maybe if he had seen his son, he would have found a reason to live and avoided the accident." For several days, Ruby berated herself. She couldn't take it anymore and finally told Joe about the accident. He was also deeply affected by the news. "Ruby, unfortunately, there's nothing we can do to change or fix it now. But I would advise you to visit Liam's mother. I think, given the situation, it would be a noble thing to do. And take Martin with you." After her son's funeral, Irene was bedridden for several days. She didn't even have the strength to get up and make herself a meal. Her pride wouldn't let her trouble the neighbors, and she hadn't formed good relationships with anyone. Vince hadn't shown up for a long time. Her hopes of spending their old age together were dashed. Liam had ruined everything. She picked up a portrait of her son in a mourning frame from the coffee table and cried. "Liam, why did you leave me alone? Why didn't you want to live with Ruby? You couldn't get along with Vince's daughter either. And you almost ended up in jail." Liam hadn't lasted long in Vince's company. Vince had treated him like a son, and in return, Liam had betrayed him. He was caught in financial fraud, but Vince took pity on him and didn't press charges. "Thank your mother. If it weren't for my feelings for her, you'd be in prison. I never thought you'd turn out to be such a scoundrel." Liam tried to return to his old job, but a young manager had taken over Vince's place. He did a background check and turned Liam down. "No, buddy, we don't need workers like you." For several months, Liam searched for a job but found nothing suitable. Needing to eat, he took a job in a warehouse. There, he was welcomed by fellow down-and-outers who drowned their sorrows in alcohol. In short, Liam quickly spiraled downward. All that was left of his former life were memories. Irene stroked the picture with her hand. "Liam, I'll die soon too. Why should I live, for what? Even Vince has turned away from me." The doorbell rang, and the woman flinched. Leaning on her cane, she took small steps and called out to keep the unexpected guest from leaving. "Wait, I'm coming. I'll open it now, my legs just aren't working." She took a long time unlocking the door, pleading for the guest to stay. When she finally opened it, she gasped. "Ruby, is that you?" "Yes, Irene, it's me. Can I come in?" Irene stepped aside. "Come in, Ruby. Forgive the mess, but I've been very sick since I buried Liam." Tears began to flow from Irene's eyes. At that moment, Martin, who had been watching everything while clinging to his mother, spoke up. "Mom, who is this lady and why is she crying? Did something bad happen to her?" The shock was so intense that Irene stopped crying. She stared at the boy for a long time before whispering softly. "He looks so much like Liam." "Ruby, forgive me, you old fool. I'll never forgive myself for what I did to you back then. It was me, I was the one who set you up in front of Liam." Ruby hesitantly hugged her former mother-in-law. "I know, but I've long since forgiven you. Maybe it was meant to be this way for us. I'm also to blame for Liam. I refused to let him meet his son. I even told him that Martin wasn't his child. So I guess we're even." Irene put her hand to her mouth. "So, Liam never saw his son?" "No, but you can see your grandson. Martin and I will visit you, and you can call us." Irene started crying again. "Ruby dear, thank you. God must have sent you to save my soul." Martin watched his mother and the unfamiliar old lady with concern. He felt very sorry for her and decided to show his kindness. The boy approached Irene and gently patted her hand. "Miss, please don't cry. If you want, I can bring you a kitten or a puppy." Irene wiped her tears and smiled. "Please do, and come visit me too, grandson."